Now I'm going to demonstrate to you a couple of ways of getting your opponent off balance. It is extremely important to know how to off-balance your opponent when fighting from the turtle guard. Why is that? Because we never want our opponent to be too comfortable in the position, and at the same time, we are always trying to expose him for a sweep or maybe even a submission. Once he's off balance, there are a lot of attack options that will be open for me. Therefore, you should be always trying to get him off balance. What I'm going to demonstrate now will also help us a lot when performing some of the techniques that I will show later. It will help us develop a feeling for your opponent's balance. We must remember that we do not have eyes on our backs. So when we are in the turtle position, we rely on our feeling to determine where our opponent's center of balance is, where he's applying more pressure, etc. We do not need to be looking at him to determine these things. If we develop a good sense of feeling, that's all we need in order to know where to try to off-balance our opponent. Let me give you a couple of examples here. Elan will position himself on top of me, and I'm going to show you guys exactly where I should move to and where he's actually blocking me from moving. Usually when I find myself in a turtle, my opponent will move towards my back right away. He will not move completely towards my back, towards my hips, but he will stay a little bit to the side instead, just like this. Now, in this situation, you can notice that Elan is putting pressure downward with his weight and also in this direction. Always on top of my hips. He's heavy on my hips and legs, and it's difficult for me to move my legs. However, my upper body can move freely, like this. You can notice that I can use my upper body movement in order to off-balance my opponent. A different situation may happen when he puts his weight a little bit more forward like this. Right now he stops me from moving my upper body, but on the other hand my legs are free. I'm able to stretch them, I can throw my legs over the top and use them as I wish to off-balance him. My legs are completely free. If he moves directly behind me like this, my upper body is once again free, so I can move my chest up or even turn around and put him back into guard. If he tries to counter that by staying heavy towards my shoulders, you can see that he puts himself in a bad position. He's off balance, and now I can use my legs to roll him like this. Okay? So when I find myself in a turtle position, I will always be working from the bottom, using my legs and upper body, trying to off-balance my opponent at all times. I am not going to let him stay comfortably on top of me. I will constantly keep him on the move. I will scoot my hips, try to shift his balance forward, backwards, or to the sides, always trying to get him off balance. This is what will open him up for the techniques that we will learn later on. I might eventually use a couple of grips to stop him from moving, but as a general rule, it is the off-balancing that will dictate what I'm going to do. Always. Okay, now I'm going to demonstrate a different technique, and this is extremely common here while we spar. We get to our knees and our opponent tries to go to the side, maybe he tries to expose my back or maybe attack a clock choke. So I'm going to start on my knees, and right away I'm going to feel that he shifts his weight towards the left side. So he's bringing pressure down with his chest and also a little bit to his left side. So to my left like this. So I'm going to take advantage of this fact. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to bring my right knee up and I'm going to step around him. So I'm going to bring my right foot and I'm going to plant it on the ground on the outside of his leg, just like this. Now my next step will be to glue my hips to his hips. Now what I'm going to do is bring my right arm across and I'm going to sit up here. forcing the sweep like this. Once again, I'm in the turtle position. Elan's on top of me. I'm going to bring my right knee up and step around his leg. Now I'm going to glue my hips. It's kind of like I go underneath him, and now I'm going to use my right arm to swing him around as I sit up. Once again. Notice that I do not really use any strength during this technique. Since he shifts his weight to his left, I'm going to take advantage of that by stepping up, going underneath him, and now I'm going to sit up, getting the sweep, finishing in side control. Alright, I have just demonstrated to you the basic idea behind the sweep, and we didn't really get caught up in any minor details or any variations. Now, I'm going to start building up on that base, and we're going to start covering some variations and some details regarding the grips and the off balance of the opponent. Once again, we find ourselves in a turtle position, and now my opponent will get a different grip, my far collar. This is very good for me. As soon as he gets control of that collar, I'm going to get control of his sleeve near the wrist, and I'm going to pull his wrist down, trying to trap his forearm between my upper body and my thigh, just like this. Now, once that leg is trapped, he really cannot move anymore. So I'm going to do the same technique as before. My right knee will come up, and I'm going to step up with my right foot. As you can see, his hand is trapped. So I step with my leg, and now I'm going to sit back, roll him over. Control the head, let go the grip, and get side control. Once again, as soon as he gets control of that collar, I grab his sleeve and I trap his arm. And right now I'm putting pressure, trapping his forearm in there. Now I'm going to stretch my leg out, and I start sitting up, rolling him over, getting the sweep. Okay? Now pay attention to the detail that I'm going to show you now, because it will really make him fall for the sweep. As soon as I get control of his arm there, before I get to the sweep, I'm going to first off-balance him the other way, like this. So once I fall on my shoulder, he stops me from going. But right now, there's an opening for me to shift directions and go for the sweep. So first I roll on top of my shoulder, and now I stand up and sweep him the other way. So the key there is to shift directions. I start one way and then I sweep to the other. Another situation that may happen is for him to try to apply a clock choke as I'm in the turtle position. So my opponent goes for the collar and takes control of that collar, applying the choke. It's not good for him to get a strong grip, so I usually try to block. But even if he managed to get that grip, I still can get the sweep if I'm fast enough. Once I land here, I can pull my arm and loosen his choke. Once again, he started to go for the clock choke here. Remember, I'm going to look towards him and bring my chin down. Now I'm going to start the sweep. Once I land in side control, I need to pull that arm out, and that way he no longer has a choke. Now you got to make sure that he no longer has the choke. It's not good to let him have a strong grip in the first place. So it's always better to block that grip. If he tries to go for the collar, I block with the hand, or I may even grab a sleeve like that. And now I can go for the sweep. and it's way safer.
Certo?
It's very important to keep in mind that the sweep that I have just demonstrated is extremely similar to a self-defense position when we're standing. So I'm standing in front of my opponent gets a bear hug, and there's a self-defense technique for that. Here's how it goes. Usually when I find myself in a bear hug position, the first thing is to get into base. The second thing is to take a step back here with my right leg. Why do I do that? Because his hips were behind me, and right now once I take that step, I bring my hips behind his body. So right now I'm in a good position to sweep. Now there are two basic options. The traditional option is to grab both knees and lift the opponent, but others favor rolling with the arm and sitting back, just like the sweep. Okay, so the self-defense position is extremely simple, and you can see that it translates to the ground game. I'm in a turtle. I bring my hips behind his hips, sit up, and sweep. Alright guys, so it's always important to keep in mind that the type of technique that I'm going to use from the bottom relies directly on what type of opening my opponent gives me. So depending on where he's putting his weight on top of me, depending on where his balance is, I might use one technique or favor another one. So it's all dependent on where his balance is. Let me give you an example. In the same position, right now, Elan shifts his weight towards my back, so he brings his weight a little bit forward towards my shoulder. That makes it difficult for me to use my upper body to get him off balance. So I need to find a different solution. Once I step up with that leg, now instead of rolling him back, I'm going to walk forward. I'm going to walk and get to the same position, just like before. Once again, Elan applies weight towards my shoulder, and right now I can no longer use the previous sweep. Now I can even tap the knee if I want to, and I walk towards the back. Just like this. It's important for me to walk towards where his balance is. Notice once again, now let's see it from a different angle. I'm going to bring that leg up, and now since I cannot move backwards, I'm going to walk towards his back, moving forward and rolling him over. Alright, let's work on some different variations here for the same situation as before when he gets the grip here for the collar choke. Instead of using the previous one, now I'm going to do something different. As soon as he gets a hold of that collar, I'm going to hold his sleeve and control his arm. I'm going to move his elbow out of the way so I can duck under with my hand. As soon as I get that hand in there, I got to make sure that I apply pressure on top of his arm, so he won't be able to move and yank that arm out of that position there. Now right now it's impossible for him to escape. Here's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to step up the same way as before, and I'm going to roll with my arm, getting the sweep. Now, this may happen, or sometimes this position might happen from the standing up situation. So I'm standing up with him. I may try to go for a throw like kataguruma. The fireman's scary. So I shoot for the throw and he blocks it. Right now I'm in the same position as before. I duck under with my head and shoot my arm through. And right now I'm going to try to go for the sweep. But see, this time Elan has a good base, so he won't go for that sweep because he's basing out with his knee in hand. Here's what I'm going to do. Since I cannot take him to one side, the other side should be open, so I'm going to be able to move that way. So watch as I move my hips this way and expose his back. I can go forward and get the hooks, or I can pull him towards me, get in the back mount. Once again, we're standing up. I set up my throw, and he blocks the throw. Right now, I'm going to bring my head underneath his armpit and go for the sweep. Now, you can see how deep my arm goes. It is almost as if I'm trying to reach his neck here. And I apply pressure on the arm. Now I can let go of that grip, controlling his armpit. Now I can go towards him to get the hooks, or I can pull him back and get the back mount like this. Once again, the same situation now from the knees. He tries to get the collar. I'm going to control that and duck under with my head. I maintain the pressure. Now I'm going to step up and try to go for the sweep. If he goes, that's fine. I finish in side control. If he doesn't, I'm going to move my hips away and expose the back. Okay, now we're going to demonstrate a technique that works really well with the sitting up sweep series that we just showed you. This technique, in fact, helped me develop the sitting up sweep in the first place. It all started with a position that I have mentioned in the beginning of the tape, that control that Leozinho Vieira uses. He gets the side control and gets the Bravo grip, preventing me from moving towards him. As you can see, it's impossible to move towards my left because the grip is really tight. Here's how I started to deal with this position. The first step is to come with your hand, always using the blade of your hand underneath his jaw and directly against his neck, because this is where he's going to feel the pressure. Once I push against the spot, you can see that he's forced to give me some space here. Now I'm going to use my left hand. I'm going to bring it between my head and the arm that's supporting Elan's weight. Now, as I start to turn towards my side and go to my knees, I'm going to use my left hand to control his arm, just like this as I roll. Now you can see that his arm is strapped underneath my belly. I keep rolling, and I get the sweep and an inside control. Once again, he controls that grip. It's impossible for me to move towards my right side. I'm going to use the hand here against the neck to create some space, and now I can use my right hand and come in between us and shooting that arm through as I move to my knees. So keep rolling and control his arm right away. So I control the arm right away as I roll. Now come to your knees, trapping that forearm underneath your belly. Now you can set up the sweep by sitting up. Finishing the side control. We will now work on a sweep that, while completely different from the previous ones, will still fit in the same type of game. We worked on a series of sweeps that consisted of me sitting up and sweeping my opponent backwards towards that side like this. Now we're going to start sweeping to the opposite side, to the front, since with time he will start blocking the other type of sweep. My opponent will start shifting his weight forward in order to stop me from sweeping, and I'm going to use that in order to sweep him to that side. So I'm here with Elan, and he shifts his weight a little bit to the front, in order to block my previous series of sweeps. Once again, he's attacking my neck by grabbing my collar, and I'm going to start the technique by defending this grip, sliding my hand and shooting my arm through that gap. Once I get to that point, I'm going to control his arm by grabbing his sleeve near the wrist. His arm is now trapped. I'm going to lean forward that direction while at the same time looking away from my opponent, like this. I roll and get the sweep. Get into side control. Once again, Ilan get his collar grip. I defend by sliding my arm in. I control his sleeve, stopping him from moving. And now I'm going to place my hand on the floor. Look to the opposite side. Execute the roll, and then on the other side in side control. Let's try it again. Ilan grabs my collar. I defend with my arm. I'm going to control his sleeve and roll. Now let's work on a variation of the previous position. Once again, Ilan gets to the same position and he gets control of my collar. And now, instead of using my hand on the inside to defend that grip, I'm just going to control his sleeve around the wrist, and I'm going to pull that hand down in order to take some pressure off my neck. At the same time, I'm going to control his knee with my opposite hand, and I'm going to look away from my opponent, bringing my right shoulder towards the ground. And I jump to the other side, getting the sweep and finishing this position. Now, I cannot move to my left side because I'm going to get choked here. So in order to open the choke, I turn this way and get side control because there's no longer pressure. Once again, he controls my neck. He's trying to attack my neck with a collar. I bring that hand down, control his knee. Now, watch my shoulder. I'm going to bring my shoulder down, and I'm going to look away at the same time. I bring that shoulder to the mat, and I jump with my legs off my toes. So I force him to roll. Land in this position. Now, watch as I'm going to use my arm to unravel this position here. Get into side control. Okay, this time my opponent will do something different. He controls my collar the same way, but right now he's stepping up with his right leg. Now, if I try to go for the previous sweep right away, like this way, rolling that way, it's not going to work. Obviously. His base is too good, so instead of going that way straight forward, I'm going to pull him towards me. So I pull him to the side, bringing his knee to the ground like this, and now I execute the roll. Sweeping. Let's see it again. He controls my grip here. Now, if I try the previous sweep right away, it's not going to work. Even if I control his knee, it won't work. His base is too good. Now, I need to bring him towards me first. So, bring his knee to the ground. And now, he no longer has a good base. I can use my legs to force the roll. Let's see what happens when our opponent uses his leg in order to try to stop me from sweeping by blocking my leg here on top of my calf. So he's bringing his knee on top of my calf. Let's see if this really stops my sweep. Now, you're going to see that this sort of control right here, it's not really going to help him a lot. I'm still able to execute the sweep the same way, the same shoulder roll. I control and roll, and land right here. Now what may happen is for him to lock his legs around my leg like this, and he closes half guard. That's not a problem. If this happens, I'm find myself in inverted half guard. All I gotta do is switch sides, and I'm in a regular half guard right away. Again, he's trying to trap my leg by stepping on top of my calf. That's not a problem. I may grab the knee on top of his arm or underneath his arm. It doesn't really matter. Now, my right foot is trapped. However, my power leg, my left leg, is free. So I step up with my leg, and the power comes so I can roll and finish the sweep. Now I land in my half guard. That's not a problem. I bring my arm across, I step, and land on the opposite side, get in half guard. This technique works great from the sitting up guard, from the regular open guard. So let's see how we can fit the technique there. So my opponent approaches my guard here with one knee down and one knee up, and I'm fighting from the standard sitting up guard position. So as soon as that happens, I'm going to control the knee that's up like this. Now I place my other hand on the ground, I come to my knees, and you can notice that my leg is on the inside, hooking around his legs. So I have a hook here. Now I'm going to control his sleeve, bring my shoulder to the ground, and roll. Now I can stay here or transition to the opposite side like this. I'm fighting from the sitting up guard. The first thing that I'm going to do is control his knee, get to my knees, and use my hook. So it's important to notice that I'm hooking his leg here. I control the sleeve, bring my shoulder, and roll. This technique can also be used from a standing up position. So let's see what happens and how we can apply that when standing. So for example, Elan was trying to sweep me, he got to that position, and I stand up in order to prevent the points. Maybe he was finishing a sweep and I don't want him to get the 2 points. So I stand up, and right now I'm going to control his wrist near the sleeve, and I'm going to control his knee. So those are the 2 grips, sleeve and knee. And now I'm going to execute the same shoulder roll as before. Let's see it again faster now. Now he controls my hips, I get in base, I move away, and I roll. Notice that I move my hips. After he controls my hips and I control my grips here, I'm going to pull his knees so I'm able to move my hips away. I don't go that far, but I stay right here. I stay in this point, and right now I'm able to execute my roll. I can either bring my knee or roll right away. Like this. Okay guys, now that we already seen that this position can be used in the standing up part and also on the ground when I'm on my knees, we're going to start working on some more advanced details, and we're going to try some fancy variations of that situation. So right now we're going to start from the same position, from the sitting up guard. And right now I'm going to use my right leg on the outside. I'm going to bring that leg against his hip bone here, so my shin is against his belly. Like this. I'm going to come to my knees, control his knee and sleeve, And now I'm going to place my forehead on the ground. I'm going to kick with my right leg, and I'm going to sweep him. Landed in the mounted position. Let's try it again. I'm fighting from the sitting up guard. I'm going to use my right leg on the outside like this. So here's the transition from the sitting up guard. Foot comes in the outside, my hand comes on the ground, and I come to my knees. I control his knee. Now I'm going to control his sleeve here with my left hand. And you can see that my right leg, it's going to execute the kick. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to place my forehead on the ground and kick with my right leg. Get in the sweep and mount. Let's try it again. Once again, I'm fighting from the sitting up guard. I'm going to place my right leg on the outside this time. I'm going to come to my knees, control the knee and sleeve, forehead on the ground, and simply stretch that right leg. Alright, now we're going to bring together the two types of sweeps. The one where we roll forward and the one where we sit up, sweeping the opponent to our back. How are we going to accomplish that? In a real fighting situation, my opponent will never stay put in one place. He will always be trying to maneuver and shifting his weight. Therefore, I have to play around with his balance, so to speak. When he shifts his balance towards the back, I'm going to try to move him that way. When he moves forward, I'm going to sweep him that way. Another thing that we're going to work on is to start incorporating the turtle guard sweeps into my regular guard game, using that idea of the 4 bases that we have discussed previously. Why am I going to do that? Because if I simply get to the turtle position from the start, my opponent will be aware of my intentions. He will keep his distance. He knows that if he gets any closer, I control his ankle and sweep him. He will not want to engage. Also, remember that we're learning the turtle guard. It's a guard after all. So that we can lure him into the turtle guard and use our sweeps, we're going to start from the position here, the sitting up guard. And you can notice that it's extremely easy for me to make the transition to the turtle. We always should be careful with his arm though, especially if he's already grabbing my collar like this. I'm not going to go to my knees like this, exposing my neck for him to attack. Whenever I start moving to the turtle, I'm going to duck my head underneath his arm, preventing him from getting a good grip. If I just turn this way, I'm going to give him the choke for free. It's a bad mistake on my part. Another thing that I will always try to accomplish is to go underneath my opponent. Just like in judo, where when we go for a hip throw, we're going to try to bring our hips underneath our opponents. Why do we do that? I try to get under Elan's hips in order to try to make it easier for me to off balance and lift him. Okay? I disrupt his base. I'm not able to accomplish that if I'm not underneath him. If he maintains a good base, it's going to be difficult for me. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to start from the regular guard, and when I go to my knees, I'm going to move towards him, getting close to his hips. Now let's see how we make the transition from one technique to the other. I start from the sitting up guard, I duck under with my head and my hips slide forward, close to his. Now I can use both sweeps, going forward or going backwards. Alright, now we're going to start working on using our opponent's balance in order to set up my sweeps. We're going to start here from the sitting up guard just like before. Now I'm going to get to my knees, ducking my head underneath his arm, and making sure that my hips are close to my opponent's. Here's what's going to happen. Right now, I always sweep my opponent using what I call the principle of action-reaction. So I'm going to take action, I'm going to create an opening, and force him to give me a reaction for that. So here's what I mean. I'm going to throw my weight forward just as if I was trying to sweep him in that direction. And now he's going to shift his balance towards the back. Once he shifts his balance, I'm set up for the sweep. Using his reaction. Once again, I start from the sitting up guard. I'm going to get to my knees. And now I'm going to kind of force him to think that I'm going to roll forward. Once I shift his balance that way, he reacts. Once he reacts, it makes it easy for me to sweep him in the opposite direction. I sit and get the sweep. So the key is always to use your opponent's reaction so that you don't have to use any strength. Always in the action-reaction principle without any need for strength, almost like you're a ninja. Alright guys, so this is how the game is played. I'm always trying to trick my opponent into thinking that I'm trying to do something else. If I want to move him backwards, I'm going to make him think that I'm trying to sweep to the front. Now we're going to do the completely opposite. I'm going to try to sweep him to the front. So here's how we're going to set it up. I'm going to start from my guard just like before. I go to my knees. And now I want to sweep him to the front. So first I'm going to try to bring him backwards like this. Now you can see that I get his reaction. And all I got to do to sweep him now is roll over. Let's try that again. We will now work in a different scenario. I already swept Elan towards this side and also towards the back. After doing these sweeps over and over again in training, my opponent will eventually learn my game and try to protect himself. What he will try to do is find a middle ground, a position where he can be balanced and counter sweeps to either side. So I'm fighting Elan from my guard. I'm going to duck my head under his arm, glue my hips, and go to my knees. Now I try to bring him back. He won't go. I try to move him forward. He won't go either. So right now I find myself in a position where I'm stuck. I cannot roll or sit back. So I'm blocked either way. Now, it's difficult for him to be balanced, especially if I try shifting over from positions. Eventually I'm going to find an opening and sweep him. However, there's always a third option. So if I cannot go to the front or towards the back, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start to stand up and I'm going to walk towards him. Like this. So I get to my knees here. I glue my hips to his body, go into the turtle. And now I'm going to try my sweeps and they're not going to work. So I try to roll forward, it doesn't work. I try to sit back, it doesn't work. Remember the third option. I'm going to plant my hand on the ground, plant my foot on the ground, and now I'm going to start standing up, walking towards his back. So I'm always walking towards where he's not based. So there's no way he can base towards his back. Let's see it again. I'm fighting from the guard. Make sure you block his hand. Now once I glued my hips, I try to go forward. He blocks me. I try to sit back. The same thing. He's basing out. Plant your hand on the ground. Start to stand up and go towards his back. Alright, let's look at a different option for the same situation. So I'm fighting from the sitting up guard with Elan. Now make sure you block his grip before you get to your knees. Glue your hips to your opponent. And right now, here's what's going to happen. I try to roll forward. He blocks. I try to move backwards. And he also blocks. So this time, I'm going to use a different option. I'm going to start controlling his knee here with my hand. And instead of trying to stand up, let's see this from a different angle here. I'm going to walk with my legs towards his back. So if he won't move backwards, I'm going to start walking with my legs, pretty much crawling towards his back. So plant your feet on the ground and start walking like this. Let's see it again. Now, once I glue my hips, I'm going to make sure that I post his knee on the ground. So grab the knee and force it down. Plant your hand on the ground and start walking towards his back. Get into the side control. Another situation that happens here quite often is another way of him blocking that sweep. So we start from the sitting up guard. I duck my head underneath and I glue my hips to his hips. And now my opponent feels off balance. He knows that I'm going to get the sweep. So he tries to stand up to block that. So as he starts standing up, I need to maintain my hips close to him. So as he stands, I stand up with him. Now, you can notice two things. My hips are glued to his hips and my legs are already behind his legs. So all I got to do now is control his knee with my hand here and lift to get him down. Once again. So now, once again, he's going to do the same thing. As I get to that position, he's going to try to stand up to counter my sweep. He's trying to run away from the fight. So right now, I'm going to use a different counter, a position that's very similar to that one that we showed before from the stand-up. But now we're going to see this in a real fighting situation here. So here's how it's going to happen. I'm inside the guard. The same thing over again, and once I glue my hips, he starts to stand up. It doesn't matter if he gets my collar here, it's still the same. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to stand up and roll over the top. Let's try it again.